Welcome to our deep dive into Ikigai. You sent over some really interesting stuff on this Japanese concept of Ikigai. And, it seems like it's got some pretty good insights into living longer and happier lives. We've got excerpts from the book Ikigai, The Japanese Secret to a Long and Happy Life. And then we got some notes on blue zones and those Power Nine principles. It's quite a collection.
Yeah, it is. I'm really interested to see how these all kind of come together. What we can take away from all of this, what's practical.
Well, first things first. For anyone out there just starting out, exploring this idea, how would you explain what Ikigai is?
Well, it's often described as the intersection of four things: what you love, what you're good at, what the world needs, and what you can be paid for. You can visualize it kind of like as a Venn diagram. And the Ikigai is that sweet spot in the middle where all those circles overlap.
So it's not just like finding a fulfilling job or something like that.
No, not at all. Ikigai is about finding purpose and fulfillment in everything you do, like all aspects of life. It's about aligning your passions and your skills and your values with the needs of the world. It's a very holistic approach to living.
That's a fascinating perspective. One of the things that caught my eye in all this was the mention of Okinawa, this island in Japan. It's a blue zone, right? One of those places where people live really long lives.
That's right. Okinawa has an incredibly high concentration of centenarians, people who live to be 100 years old or older. And what's interesting is that a lot of the traditional Okinawan practices really do embody the principles of Ikigai.
Are you saying there could be like a direct connection between living with a sense of Ikigai and living a longer life?
Well, it's a really compelling hypothesis. The book you sent highlights quite a few individuals from Okinawa and from all over the world who have lived exceptionally long lives. One that really stands out is Jeanne Calment, a French woman who lived to be 122.
122, that's incredible.
I know. She was really known for her zest for life. She rode a bicycle until she was 100, and get this, she only quit smoking at 120, which I think raises some really interesting questions about how lifelong habits and outlook can impact longevity.
Wow, I agree. What about this idea of moai that comes up a lot when talking about Okinawan culture?
Oh, moai refers to those social support groups, kind of like informal community networks. They provide a sense of belonging and purpose. They offer a built-in support system, a sense of responsibility towards others, and opportunities for shared activities, all of which contribute to a sense of well-being.
It seems like all this really simple stuff, staying active, having close social ties, finding joy in simple everyday things might be way more important than we think.
That's the beauty of Ikigai. It's not about these big gestures or huge achievements. It's about finding meaning and purpose in all those little everyday moments, in the connections we make, and in things that just make us happy.
Speaking of joy, one of the things that intrigued me when I was going through these sources was that idea of a flow state.
Oh yeah, flow state. That's that state of complete absorption you get into during an activity where you lose track of time and experience a sense of effortless joy. Psychologist Mahi Csikszentmihalyi really kind of broke this down.
It's that feeling of being in the zone,
Oh,
totally
yes.
engrossed in whatever you're doing.
Precisely. And he emphasizes how important it is to find the right balance between skill and challenge to achieve flow. The activity can't be too easy or you'll get bored, but it can't be too difficult or you'll get frustrated. It's like there's this sweet spot where your abilities perfectly match what the task requires. And that's where flow thrives.
I can definitely relate to that feeling. So how does flow connect to Ikigai?
Well, when we do things that line up with our passions and skills, when we find that sweet spot between challenge and ability, we're much more likely to experience flow. And those moments of flow lead to a deeper sense of satisfaction and fulfillment in life.
It's like all the pieces fit together. You have a reason to get out of bed in the morning, something that gets you excited. You get into a state of flow while you're doing it, and that makes you feel good overall.
Exactly. And it's not even just about these big passions. Even small, everyday activities can become a source of flow and contribute to our sense of ikigai.
That makes me think of another interesting practice mentioned in the book, harahachibu.
Oh, yes, harahachibu. That's that Okinawan principle of only eating until you're about 80% full. It's all about mindful eating, paying attention to your body's signals of fullness, and stopping before you feel totally stuffed.
So it's about awareness and moderation.
Absolutely. And it ties back into Ikigai because it highlights how important it is to be present and find purpose even in something as simple as eating.
So instead of just like shoveling food into your face, you're actually tasting every bite, paying attention to your body, and enjoying the experience. It becomes more than just fuel. It's a mindful activity.
Precisely. And it speaks to a broader idea of balance and harmony that seems to be woven into the fabric of Okinawan life.
It really does seem like mindfulness is a key element in all of this, being present and engaged, whether it's in your work or your relationships or even just eating a meal.
You're exactly right. That focus on the present moment seems to be a consistent theme throughout a lot of these practices.
And that brings us to another important aspect of Ikigai, resilience.
Resilience is absolutely crucial for dealing with all the challenges and setbacks that life throws at us. It's that ability to bounce back from adversity, to adapt and grow when things get tough.
So how does that connect to Ikigai?
Well, when we have a sense of purpose and meaning in life, it can really fuel our resilience. When we have something to work towards, something that gives us a reason to get up in the morning, we're better equipped to handle those tough times.
So having a strong sense of Ikigai can actually help us deal with difficult times.
That's the idea. And there are some really fascinating Japanese concepts that can help us cultivate resilience. The book talks about wabi-sabi and ichigo-ichi.
Those sound really interesting. Tell me more.
So wabi-sabi is the art of finding beauty in imperfection and impermanence. It's about embracing the cracks and flaws, appreciating that everything is temporary, and finding beauty in the simplicity of everyday life.
And what about Ichigo-ichi?
Ichigo-ichi means one time, one meeting. It's a reminder to appreciate each moment, each encounter, as something unique and special that will never happen again in exactly the same way.
So it's about living in the moment and realizing that each moment is precious.
Exactly. And both of these concepts, wabi-sabi and ichigo-ichi, can really help us be more resilient because they encourage us to accept things as they are, let go of the need for everything to be perfect, and find joy in the present no matter what's going on.
Wow, these ideas are really hitting home for me. It's like a totally new way of seeing the world.
I know what you mean. And it reminds us that even when things are tough, there's always beauty to be found, moments to cherish, and lessons to learn.
So now I'm curious. What about you? Which of these aspects of Ikigai and longevity stands out the most to you?
That's a tough one. They all kind of blend together, you know? But if I had to pick, you know what's so cool to me is how connected it all is. It's not like you just pick one thing to do and that's it. You know?
Right. It's not about just suddenly like eating a bunch of goji berries every day and calling it good.
Yeah, exactly. You got to understand the whole philosophy behind it, you know, the mindset that helps create purpose and well-being. It's more like a lifestyle change than just a quick fix.
So we shouldn't get caught up in like trying to copy everything these centenarians do, but more like figure out why they do what they do and then see how we can apply those principles to our own lives.
Yeah, that's a great way to put it. It's about finding what makes you tick, your own Ikigai, your reason for being you, and then letting that be your compass.
Makes sense.
Yeah.
But I bet some people listening are like, okay, that sounds awesome, but how do I even find my Ikigai? It feels a little like trying to find buried treasure without a map.
Such a good question. And yeah, you can't just Google it or find it in some self-help book. It's a very personal journey, you know? It's about figuring out who you are.
Okay, so where do we even start?
Well, the book suggests starting by just thinking back, you know? Look back on your life and think about times you felt truly happy and engaged and like you were doing something meaningful. What were you doing during those times? What was happening around you? What made those experiences so special?
So tap into those moments when we felt really passionate and fulfilled.
Yes. It's like you're retracing your steps, trying to find clues to your Ikigai. The book also says it's important to pay attention to what naturally pulls you in, what makes you curious, what kind of things make you totally lose track of time.
For me, it's definitely getting lost in a good book or going down those research rabbit holes online.
There you go. Those are hints. And don't be scared to try new things. Step outside that comfort zone. You never know what you might discover about yourself.
You know, there's that exploration piece again.
Yeah.
So we look at the past, we pay attention to what we're drawn to naturally, and we keep trying new things. But how do we know if we're on the right path with all this exploring?
Well, it helps to remember those 4 parts of Ikigai. What you love, what you're good at, what the world needs, and what you can get paid for. So as you're exploring all this, ask yourself, does this thing I'm trying make me feel something? Does it use my skills and talents? Does it make the world a better place somehow? And could I see myself making a living doing this?
So it's about finding that sweet spot where all of those things come together, right?
Yeah, exactly. And don't forget, Ikigai isn't set in stone. It can change as you grow and change. What brings you joy and purpose today might be totally different down the road as you have new experiences and learn new skills.
So it's like an ongoing process, a lifelong journey of discovering yourself and finding what feels right.
Exactly. And the best part is just going through the process is rewarding in itself. It's all about embracing exploration and trying new things and thinking about who you are. It's about enjoying the journey, not just the destination.
I love that. Now let's get into some of those practical things we can actually do that we were talking about earlier.
Absolutely. We touched on harahachibu and flow state. Let's dive into how we can use those in our everyday lives.
Okay, so let's start with harahachibi, that Okinawan thing about eating until you're 80% full.
Yeah.
How can people actually make that part of their daily routine?
Well, you got to start by just being more mindful about eating. Slow down, enjoy every bite, and pay attention to your body's signals. Notice when you start to feel full.
So instead of just mindlessly eating everything on your plate, you're actually listening to what your body is telling you.
Yes. And resist that urge to finish everything just because it's there. A lot of times we eat just because we're used to it or feel like we have to, not because we're actually hungry.
It's like we have to relearn how we think about food and get better at knowing when we've had enough.
Right. And you can use that mindful approach in other areas of your life, too. It's all about being present and doing things with intention.
Let's talk about flow state now.
Yeah.
We've all felt that, being so absorbed in something that time just flies by. But how can we actually create those flow experiences on purpose?
Well, the trick is to figure out what kinds of activities bring you to that place. It might be something like playing music, writing, painting, playing sports, or even just gardening or spending time out in nature.
It's different for everyone.
Totally. What matters is that you figure out what helps you reach that flow state and then actually make time for those things in your life.
And once you know what those activities are, what else can you do to help that flow feeling happen?
Think about your environment. Try to minimize distractions you know. Set some goals for what you're doing, but don't be too strict about it. Let yourself play around and explore a bit. And really importantly, find that sweet spot between how skilled you are and how challenging the activity is.
That balance where you're engaged but not overwhelmed.
Yeah. Remember, flow happens best when what you're capable of doing matches the demands of what you're doing. Too easy and you get bored. Too hard and you get frustrated. Find that balance.
So it's like setting the stage for flow, making the right conditions for it to happen.
Exactly. And the more you practice, the easier it gets to reach that flow state.
This is so helpful. I love how these simple practices can actually make a big difference in how we feel.
It's true. And what's really neat is how it's all connected. By doing these things, you're not just improving your health and well-being, you're also growing your Ikigai.
You're nurturing that sense of purpose and meaning that seems so important for a long and happy life.
Exactly. It's a whole person approach where everything works together and supports each other.
I'm feeling super inspired right now.
Oh, me too. It just shows that we have more control over our lives and how we feel than we might think. We can make choices that help us live longer, healthier, and more fulfilling lives.
It's about taking the reins, and deciding to actively create the life we want.
Right. It's about embracing the journey, exploring, discovering things about ourselves, and realizing that searching for a meaningful life is an adventure worth having.
This deep dive is really making me think about my own choices and what I prioritize.
That's the cool thing about these kinds of conversations. They get you thinking and encourage you to do something and ultimately give you the power to be in charge of your life.
So true. Now, before we move on, was there anything else in all this that stood out to you?
Actually, yeah, I got really interested in this idea of anti-fragility. It kind of takes things a step further than just resilience.
Anti-fragility. I don't think I've heard of that before.
Yeah, it's a concept this guy, Nassim Nicholas Taleb, talks about. And it means that, instead of just dealing with shocks and staying the same, there are things that actually get better and stronger from those disruptions.
So it's not just about bouncing back. It's about using those challenges to actually improve.
Exactly. Resilience is like riding out the storm. Anti-fragility is like using the storm to push you ahead.
That's a really cool way to think about it. So how does that idea fit in with Ikigai and living a longer, happier life?
Well, if we think of Ikigai as that thing that gives our life meaning, our reason for being, then anti-fragility is about making sure that sense of purpose not only makes it through tough times, but it actually gets stronger because of them.
Makes sense. So how can we become more anti-fragile? What can we actually do?
Well, Taleb says a few things. First, he says it's super important to have backups in your life. Don't put all your eggs in one basket.
So having different ways to make money, lots of friends, and different hobbies and interests.
Exactly. That way, if one thing goes wrong, you have other things to rely on.
It's kind of like having a safety net, but it's also about having a richer life with lots of different things going on.
Totally. The next thing Taleb says is you need to balance playing it safe with taking risks.
So don't be reckless,
Mm.
but also don't be afraid to try new things and get out of your comfort zone a little bit.
Yeah. It's about knowing when to be careful and when to push yourself, you know? Like, maybe be more cautious with your finances, but be more adventurous with trying new hobbies.
It's about going with the flow and changing things up depending on what's going on.
Right. And finally, Telev says it's really important to get rid of stuff that's making you fragile.
Stuff that just drains you or holds you back or puts you in a bad position.
Exactly. Maybe that means ending relationships that aren't good for you, changing beliefs that limit you, or stopping bad habits.
So it's like getting rid of all the extra baggage in your life and focusing on the things that really matter.
Yes. And when you do all of those things, you're not just becoming more resilient, you're building anti-fragility. You're becoming someone who doesn't just survive challenges, but thrives on them and gets stronger because of them.
I really like this idea of anti-fragility.
Yeah.
It makes me feel like I have more control.
Yeah.
You know, like I can actually choose how my life goes and how I react to things so that I become a stronger person.
I agree. It's like changing the way you think about challenges. Instead of seeing them as these scary things, you see them as chances to grow and become a better version of yourself.
You know, as we've been talking about Ikigai and living longer, I keep coming back to this idea of slowing down and appreciating the moment.
I hear you. That's a huge part of Ikigai, and it seems like a lot of cultures that are known for long and healthy lives really value that.
It seems kind of weird in today's world, you know?
Yeah.
Everyone's always rushing around trying to achieve the next thing, and we forget to just enjoy what's happening right now.
We're so busy chasing happiness in the future that we miss the happiness that's right in front of us.
And Ikigai is like a reminder to pay attention to those little things. You know, find joy and purpose in everyday moments, whether that's just having a cup of tea, hanging out in nature, or connecting with people we love.
It's all about slowing down and being present and realizing that happiness isn't some far-off goal. It's a way of living your life.
This deep dive has been amazing. I feel like we've learned so much about how to live a longer and more meaningful life.
It's been awesome. It's been a really interesting journey, you know, exploring Ikigai and how all these different things come together to make a happy and long life.
I hope everyone listening is feeling inspired to take some of these ideas and use them in their own life. Finding your Ikigai is a personal journey, but it's a journey worth taking.
Definitely. It's all about embracing the journey, finding yourself, and always being open to new things that bring joy and meaning into our lives.
So well said. And on that note, I think it's time to wrap up our deep dive. Thanks for joining us on this incredible journey. And until next time, keep searching for your Ikigai.